Raymond has a very close female friend. Their relationship is so close that they sleep in the same bed and share an ice cream. I asked him to keep some distance. He said he treats that girl like one of the guys. He was impatient. If something was going to happen, it would have already. Can't we just trust each other? Fine. I turned to find a male friend. When Raymond spent another night out with Martina, I remained calm. He came back at noon with dessert, and seeing me, he rarely offered an explanation. We haven't hung out in a while, so I got drunk and stayed at a gaming hotel, but this time I slept on the sofa. He emphasized that. After all, last time we had a huge fight about this. I accused him of having no boundaries, demanding he confront Martina. Martina grew up in their community. She's a girl, but very carefree. She's friends with everyone. I've seen Martina casually sitting on their laps, laughing and joking, even sharing a drink without a care. At first, he patiently explained. But then he got annoyed and left with, "If something was going to happen, it wouldn't be your place to marry me," and slammed the door. Ironically, his friends advised me. Martina grew up with us, that's just her nature. Raymond sees her as a kid, like a sister. A kid? Is 25 still a kid? I found it unbearable and said if he couldn't be discreet, he should get a divorce. After that, Raymond did keep his distance from Martina for a while, but the result was that Martina would sarcastically taunt me in public. "Sarah, look, I'm not sitting next to Raymond, right? Raymond, you should skip the next party so Sarah doesn't get mad. Raymond isn't the same anymore, he's tied to a leash, so I can't get too close." She said these things whenever I was around. Naturally, it created a subtle tension. Over time, I earned a reputation for being petty, jealous, and unreasonable. My relationship with Raymond began to feel distant and strained. Coming back to reality. I looked at the food container Raymond was holding, once my favorite meal, now tasteless. He noticed my indifference and placed the container on the table, coming over to hug me, his voice soft and eager to please. "Darling, didn't you always want to watch a movie? I'm free today, so we can see that film you like." It was a movie I had been looking forward to. As soon as it was released, I had invited Raymond. He said he was busy. Then a few days later, I saw Martina flaunting movie tickets in her social circle. 2 tickets. Though she didn't show her face, I recognized that slender hand with a wedding ring on her 4th finger. I smelled the faint pear blossom fragrance on Raymond, expressionless as I pulled away, rejecting him, "No thanks." I continued packing my luggage. "Sarah." Raymond's voice turned angry as he grabbed my hand. "Are you trying to pull that runaway act again? I told you, there's nothing between me and Martina." "I know." I calmly withdrew my hand, "You're just friends." He seemed caught off guard. Raymond's expression shifted awkwardly as he let go, frowning. "Then what are you upset about?" "I have a business trip." I explained. Raymond looked even more displeased, staring at me for a long time, as if trying to decipher my expression. But there was nothing to read. My reaction stayed calm. Because I no longer cared. Who he watched movies with, who he spent nights out with, or who he dated. It didn't matter. Seeing that I wasn't upset, Raymond grew angrier. It seemed he believed I was just sulking, wanting to make amends, pulling out his phone to book movie tickets. I watched him anxiously searching. Finally, I couldn't hold back, softly reminding him, "That movie is no longer available." Raymond's finger froze on the screen. In that moment, I saw several emotions on his face. The air felt heavy with unspoken tension. The food on the table gradually cooled. I bent down, putting the last item in my suitcase and closing it. After that day, Raymond suddenly became warm towards me. While I was away on business, he consistently checked in, asking about my return time. I told him. On the day I returned, I saw his car outside the airport. A black Bugatti parked by the side of the road. When he saw me, he quickly got out and naturally came over to grab my suitcase. But as I reached the car, I spotted Martina in the passenger seat. She was lounging with her legs crossed, hand resting on the window, and when she saw me, she smiled sweetly. "Sarah, hitching a ride? I'll let you have the front seat in a bit." She was playful. Though she said that, she had no intention of moving. Raymond placed my luggage in the trunk, noticed I was standing still, and spoke awkwardly. She just happened to be nearby. I'm giving her a ride since she gets carsick. In our previous argument, I had brought up how Martina always claimed the front seat whenever we traveled. But before I could say anything, Martina poked her head out the window, her eyes sparkling. Good thing Raymond was around today, otherwise, I couldn't even get a cab from that godforsaken place. You don't believe me? Check the group chat for proof. That group chat is their friends' chat, and of course, I'm not included. Of course, if Raymond just ignored me, I'd complain to his parents. Martina kept talking, playfully pretending to punch Raymond. She pulled her arm back as if remembering something, winking at me. Sorry, I'm just used to it, it's nothing personal. Since the last big fight with Raymond, Martina had shifted from being completely careless to pretending to be cautious around him. It seemed my fussiness had forced her to keep her distance from Raymond. But if Martina genuinely wanted to maintain distance, why did she soon go back to spending nights out and dating? I could even sense her subtle provocation. Such tricks would have infuriated me before. But now, I couldn't be bothered. Even when Raymond asked Martina to get out of the car, I simply waved and opened the back door. It's fine, I have a friend who's also on the way, I'll have him sit in the back. A friend? Where? Before Raymond could react, someone shouted my name. Turning around, my expression changed instantly. A well-dressed, charming guy with broad shoulders and a narrow waist was excitedly dragging a suitcase towards me, and as he stood still, he complained. Sarah, you're not being loyal. I just turned around for a second, and you disappeared. The guy clung to my arm, pouting like a spoiled child. I'm new here, you have to take responsibility. This scene stunned both Raymond and Martina. Quickly, Raymond snapped back, pulling me. This is your so-called friend? His voice carried annoyance as he glared at the man, his brows furrowed tight. Yeah, I'm Sarah's good friend, Vincent. Vincent confidently shook hands with Raymond, casually placing his suitcase in the trunk, then plopping down in the back seat, excitedly waving at me. Sarah, get in. I got in, but Raymond stopped me. Darling, is it appropriate for you to sit with a man right in front of me? He leaned in close, and I could almost hear his teeth grinding. I was puzzled, it's just a friend. I glanced at Martina, still comfortably in the passenger seat. For a moment, Raymond was at a loss for words. Vincent and I talked all the way. The front seat felt unusually quiet. It wasn't that Martina wasn't talking. She was lively and chatty. Whenever we traveled, she would drag Raymond into endless chatter, discussing everything from childhood stories to the latest gossip. Their conversation always left me, sitting in the back, unable to join in. But today, no matter how much Martina tried to strike up a conversation, Raymond remained distant. The 30-minute drive wrapped up in just 15 minutes. After dropping off the two of them, he opened the passenger door. Why don't you sit up front? I shot him a confused glance, remaining motionless in the back seat, and lightly declined. I'm fine back here. Tired? Let's head home quickly. I closed my eyes to rest. In the silence, the sound of Raymond closing the door was louder than usual. Raymond walked into the house with a dark expression. I had just changed my shoes and stepped out of the entryway when I saw him sitting in the living room, smoking. The red glow of the flame reflected in his glasses, his expression flickering between light and shadow. What's your relationship with that guy? Raymond took a hard drag from his cigarette, crushed it in the ashtray, and looked up at me. I met his gaze, my tone flat. Just a friend. A friend? Sarah, you went on this business trip with him, didn't you? Spending days alone together. His anger grew as he spoke, and he kicked the suitcase hard. I was angry too, opening the suitcase and seeing his furious expression. I shot back, business partners are either men or women. He's easy to get along with, what's the problem? Of course there's a problem. He's a man. You two are alone together, and you're already married. What's wrong? You can have a close female friend, but I can't have a good male friend? My words caught him off guard. I had never seen so many vivid expressions on Raymond's face before: shock, frustration, and helplessness. Finally, he almost ground out, Martina is different, she grew up with us. If anything were to happen, it would have by now. I'm not the same with Vincent. Can't you trust me a little? I interrupted him, speaking with conviction. Raymond was at a loss. For days, he kept giving me the cold shoulder. After a few days of tension, his parents invited us out for dinner. At the table, they noticed the strange atmosphere and subtly nudged Raymond. Raymond, Sarah came all this way for you, so you can't treat her poorly. Raymond and I were college classmates. I was an only child. Originally, the plan was for me to return to my hometown after graduation. But for him, I resolutely stayed here. Hearing his parents' words, Raymond's expression softened. Before we left, he took my hand. Sarah, Before he could finish, Martina threw her arms around his neck. Raymond, it's rare for you to come back, let's hang out. She once again unabashedly leaned into Raymond. But this time, instead of responding with his usual smile, Raymond shrugged her off, looking awkwardly at me. Martina noticed me too and let out a teasing sound, raising her eyebrows. So you're here too? With that, she took a big step back, right into a group of friends who had followed her. Raymond, you didn't say anything in the group chat when you got back. If it weren't for Martina saying she saw you, you could have slipped away. Yeah, it's a rare occasion for everyone to be together. Let's hang out. The group egged him on. Raymond clearly looked tempted. But unlike before, he didn't agree right away. Instead, he glanced at me for approval. Everyone noticed. Even though we were married, they still kept a certain distance from me. Partly because I wasn't part of their circle, and partly because of Martina. They couldn't let loose around me at their gatherings. How about we all go hang out? Raymond asked tentatively. At that moment, I could feel the tension in the air. Martina was even more obvious, pouting and exchanging glances with those around her. Everyone was waiting for my answer. They didn't really want me to come, but hoped I'd let Raymond go. As they wished. I pulled my hand away from Raymond's grasp, my voice calm and gentle as I said, I'll take a cab home. No one spoke. The atmosphere became strangely silent. After a while, Raymond hesitated, seeming to sigh in relief, yet also feeling guilty. Then I'll come home early, he assured me softly. I just smiled and walked straight out of the yard. As I turned my back, I heard someone say, Raymond, has Sarah changed? Not jealous of Martina anymore? Letting you hang out with us? At 11 that night, Raymond still hadn't come back. I didn't ask. Because I had just arranged to meet Vincent. I went out with a few friends to the liveliest bar in town. The explosive music pounded against my eardrums, giving a sense of freedom from everything. We chose a spacious booth and quickly got into the fun. After a few rounds of drinks, someone next to me suddenly got excited and pointed. Wow! That looks so thrilling over there. Everyone immediately turned to look. I turned around too. And there they were, Raymond's group of friends, 7 guys and 1 girl, with a table piled high with bottles. Raymond was sitting at the head of the table, his face obscured by distance, but he was hunched over, looking at his phone. Soon, Martina snatched the phone from his hand, then she climbed onto him, wrapping her arms around his neck, holding up a bottle of alcohol. Everyone around was used to it, even standing up to cheer. It looks like they're playing a drinking game, mouth to mouth. This girl is incredible. Just now, she was asked to take off her underwear, and without a second thought, she hung it around someone else's neck. I've seen guys riding girls, but never seen 7 guys with 1 girl. Everyone laughed, but I didn't. Because I saw Raymond put down his phone, responding as Martina leaned down to feed him alcohol amid the cheers. It was disgusting. Martina didn't manage to feed him. Because I walked over. I slapped her hard. The scene turned chaotic. Raymond's friends tried to smooth things over, saying it was just a joke, while Martina pouted, claiming it was just a game. I expressionlessly threw her underwear back at her face, which was still hanging on another man, and turned to leave. If you want to play, just wait until I divorce Raymond and then enjoy yourself, I said as I left. I was serious. Because I was really tired. But Raymond didn't agree. He chased after me back home. We were really just playing a game. Martina is just messing around with us, we never saw her as a woman. You were angry just now too. I promise from now on I won't mess around with them. Sarah, I never said you couldn't go to a bar with a bunch of guys. He was getting more and more impatient as he tried to placate me. Finally, he grabbed his hair and shouted at me. At that moment, I had already packed my bags. I had a lot of stuff, and I couldn't take it all in one go. But I didn't want to stay with him for even another second. Move. I coldly looked at his arm blocking my way, my gaze moving up, my voice unexpectedly calm. Real heartache isn't about loud fights. It's how I feel now. Everything has lost its meaning. Raymond was taken aback by my expression, his tall figure slightly stiffened, his face flushed from the alcohol as he gritted his teeth. Why do you have to take this so seriously? Raymond, would you be okay with me sitting on Vincent's lap like this? I asked. Raymond froze. I scoffed, taking a step closer to him. You wouldn't be okay. You got angry and sulked for days when you saw us on a business trip, sitting in the back seat together. So why should I pretend not to see it? That's different. Raymond blurted out. I'm a man, you're a woman. When I go out, I won't let anyone take advantage of me. Hearing his words, I felt my worldview shatter once more. I even felt like I was meeting this person for the first time. My body trembled involuntarily, incredulously saying, so you've always known. You know that Martina's behavior is wrong, that it's promiscuous, disgusting. But is it just because she's a woman that you all enjoy taking advantage of her, feeling a sense of accomplishment from it? Raymond was left speechless by my words. It was as if the curtain of shame had been pulled back, his face turned pale, and he instinctively looked away. I had hit the nail on the head. I couldn't help but laugh. Vincent, I brought her here to annoy you on purpose. I said. Raymond turned back, surprised. Then I added, because I initially thought you just didn't understand the boundaries in male-female relationships, hoping you'd gain some insight from empathy. But I was wrong, it's not that you didn't know, you just enjoy it. I pushed him away forcefully. The tall man, over 6 feet, was caught off guard and fell to the ground. I ignored him. Raymond, let's get a divorce, otherwise, I'll respect you even less. Raymond refused to divorce. He even brought my parents in. Raymond had a great image in front of them. He was well-educated, good-looking, his parents were highly knowledgeable, and he had founded his own company right after graduation, showing his sincerity when we got married. So, they helped him persuade me. But after a few days, the tide turned. Raymond became infamous. Someone filmed the incident at the bar and posted it online. Suddenly, everyone knew that Martina was sitting on a married man's lap, feeding him drinks mouth to mouth, and getting slapped by his wife. Public opinion was overwhelmingly negative. Everyone criticized Martina and Raymond. How shameless. Knowing he has a wife and still getting close? She's so bold, her underwear was even hanging around someone else's neck. The guy is disgusting too, doesn't he fear getting sick? At first, Martina argued with netizens, claiming they were the dirty ones and that their relationship was just pure friendship growing up together. But netizens didn't buy it. They started digging up her information across various accounts. The more they dug, the more dirt they found. She wore her brother's clothes, slept in his bed, shared drinks, and even ate from the same ice cream cone, holding hands. The worst incident was when she sneaked into a private men's bathhouse wrapped in a towel, bathing with her friends. She documented it all in her daily posts, with an air of pride. Martina became famous, and so did Raymond. His friends became famous too. All the ones with girlfriends broke up, and the single ones lost their chances. Marketing accounts jokingly called them Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Netizens said it was the worst image Snow White had ever gotten. Watching all this unfold, I felt a bit satisfied. Martina was like a tumor, growing larger in my relationship with Raymond. I tried to cut it out, but Raymond never seemed to care. Now, the tumor was fighting back, and I was pulling away. After a few days of being in the headlines, public opinion was suppressed. Raymond's circle consisted of wealthy and powerful young men, and just like that, all negative comments were wiped clean overnight. Martina's account was also completely erased. A few days later, Raymond's parents came to see me. They begged me to visit him. He had drunk to the point of vomiting blood. By the time they realized it and took him to the hospital, he was in a deep coma. It took a night of emergency care to pull him back to life, and on the hospital bed, he kept murmuring my name. I know this time Raymond was wrong, but for the sake of your marriage, please just visit him, Sarah, we're begging you. I went to the hospital. Raymond had lost a lot of weight. The loose hospital gown hung on him, making him look even more fragile. His face was pale and nearly transparent, but when he saw me, there was a glimmer of life on his otherwise lost face. I approached and stopped him from getting up. When are you getting out? I asked. Raymond's eyes lit up as he struggled to speak. Next week. Sarah, are you willing to forgive me? I promise, if you give me another chance, I won't make the same mistakes again. I'll keep my distance from Martina. When you get out, we'll finalize the divorce. I shattered his hopes. Looking at the pain twisting his features, beads of sweat rolled down his forehead along his temples, his voice rough like sandpaper. Sarah, I didn't cheat, you know that was all just fun. I promise I'll draw the line with them from now on. Sarah, I beg you, don't leave me. Seeing that I was unmoved, Raymond rolled off the bed and knelt in front of me. In the struggle, he knocked over the four stand, the sound crashing loudly as it fell to the ground. Even the 4-needle bent and cut his hand, blood splattering. It was chaotic and tragic. When did Raymond ever end up like this? He came from a good family and was good-looking. He had always been surrounded by girls. Proud as he was, when had he ever begged a woman like this? I should have been moved. But I wasn't. I just looked down at him, not even intending to bend down and help him, shaking my head in refusal. No. My indifference pierced Raymond. I could clearly feel his pain and despair, even a hint of confusion. Clearly, it was Martina who made the first move. I may not have refused, but I didn't do anything wrong. Why do you have to hold on to this? He shouted in frustration. It seemed to aggravate his injuries, blood quickly seeping from his waist, a shocking crimson. The commotion soon attracted both our parents. Seeing this scene, it turned chaotic. Sarah, he made a mistake, but the real culprit is Martina. Raymond just saw her as a sister. He was tricked too. As the saying goes, it takes 100 years of good deeds to share a boat, and 1,000 years to share a bed. You and Raymond have been through so much together. Do you really have to end it here? I promise, as long as you don't divorce Raymond, from now on, the house, car, company, and savings will all be in your name. If there's another incident, Raymond will leave with nothing. His father promised. He had absolute authority in the family. Sure enough, my parents were moved. They looked hesitant. Sarah, his family is showing sincerity this time. Raymond really understands his mistakes. My mom whispered to me. My dad wanted to argue, but was silenced by my mom's glare, who pulled his ear. I know what you want to say, we can support our daughter, but Sarah's child can't be without a father. Yes, I was pregnant. 1 month. Originally, I planned to terminate the pregnancy, but my parents found out. Their reverence for life surpassed my expectations. They looked at Raymond, and even without saying anything, their expressions softened compared to when we first met. Clearly, they wanted to give Raymond another chance. In the end, I agreed to give Raymond one more chance. As long as he had no contact with Martina for a month, I wouldn't consider divorce anymore. Both sets of parents witnessed this. His face lit up with joy, eagerly agreeing. He seemed to think my proposal was an easy task. Both sets of parents sighed in relief. But only I knew. For him, this was a losing gamble. Raymond blocked Martina. He really kept his distance. He left the group chats, unfollowed all accounts, and even showed me screenshots of his phone every day, guaranteeing that everything was clean. Vincent was surprised. Sarah, you're not planning to reconcile with your ex-husband, are you? He leaned in, curious. He seemed unserious, but kept an appropriate distance from me. Vincent knew about my issues with Raymond. After a few days away on business, he analyzed it seriously and proposed a solution. Using his tactics against him. Making Raymond feel the taste of having a friend of the opposite sex. The effect was quite obvious. But now, I saw this man clearly. Our issues were never about Martina. I noticed Vincent's concern and spoke candidly, the outcome of the divorce won't change. It seemed he thought I was reconsidering. Both sets of parents believed I was softening. And I, after seeing my parents off, scheduled an appointment for the abortion. That day was Martina's birthday. How did I know? Because Martina was the only girl in their community, and every year, her birthday party was a must-attend for everyone, rain or shine. I purposely chose that day, not to spite anyone, but because I didn't want Raymond to disturb me that day. Vincent took me there. On the way, he cried harder than I did. I'm serious. Having a child without getting married isn't out of the question. I could just adopt, anyway. I'm never getting married in this lifetime. Vincent had a first love he was very close to, but sadly, she passed away when he was 20. Since then, he's been putting on a facade of cynicism, living alone for many years. Sarah, can't you think it over one more time? I'll cover half the costs of raising the child. While waiting at the surgery room door, he was still insisting. I remained calm. First, I am me. Second, I'm the child's mother. Vincent was speechless, looking at me with a complicated expression. He nodded, saying, as a friend, I respect all your decisions. As a man, I understand your determination to leave Raymond. I tugged at the corner of my mouth. Without needing to look, I knew how bleak my expression must be. Even after making my decision, I felt tears welling up the moment I turned away. My flat stomach didn't give me any feeling of being a mother. But I admit, I held off on bringing up divorce just for this child, deciding to give Raymond a chance to empathize. Unfortunately, he didn't seize it. After the anesthesia, I was completely unaware. So, I had no idea I was in a life and death situation. The patient is experiencing uncontrollable bleeding. Where's the family? We need a signature immediately. When the doctor burst out of the operating room, Vincent was stunned. A document was shoved into his hands. But he had no way to prove our relationship. Can we leave that blank for now? Her parents aren't local, and her husband is still busy. What kind of joke is this? Hospital regulations. Call her husband immediately. The patient's condition is critical. The doctor was visibly anxious. Vincent snapped out of his daze and frantically called Raymond. 1 call, 2, 3, 13, 33, 53. No answer. By the 53rd call, the line was cut off. Vincent went from worry to panic, finally breaking down. Answer the phone. Raymond, your wife is about to die. How can you celebrate another woman's birthday right now? He yelled desperately in the hospital corridor. The onlookers, nurses, patients, stopped and watched, touched by the scene. Some even joined in to criticize the jerk and to help solve the problem. Then someone suggested, if you can't reach him, try contacting someone who can. Vincent had an epiphany and used my phone to dial another number. Raymond arrived 15 minutes later. Trailing behind him were my in-laws. When Raymond showed up, he was covered in cake frosting, his tie loosened, collar wide open, and his hair drenched. I learned all this after I woke up from Vincent. Your uterine wall is inherently thin, which caused the bleeding. Fortunately, we got help in time, and your uterus was saved. Vincent marveled at my luck. I, however, remained indifferent, asking, is Raymond still kneeling outside? This time, Raymond knelt at the door of the ward without anyone pleading for him. His parents were aware of their guilt. After the surgery, my mother-in-law comforted me for a long while. Before leaving, she reluctantly held my hand, saying, Sarah, I'm sorry for all you've endured since marrying into our family. My son is beyond help. If you want a divorce, we won't urge you to reconsider. Just follow your heart. Coming back to my senses, I met Vincent's complex gaze, maintaining a calm demeanor. Help me out of here. Vincent wanted to persuade me. But he couldn't change my mind. He could only support me as I was wheeled towards the door. In the hospital corridor, Raymond was still kneeling upright, dressed in the crumpled suit from earlier, with a bruise on his cheekbone. Vincent had hit him. In front of so many people, Raymond didn't fight back. And now, amidst the crowd, Raymond, who usually disliked being watched, didn't move a muscle. When he saw me, his face showed pain and sorrow. Before he could speak, I tossed a document his way. You lost. The 3 concise words made Raymond's expression change dramatically. The noisy corridor was filled with murmurs from the onlookers, but they couldn't drown out his heavy breathing. He didn't look at the document on the ground, his gaze fixed on me. The clever man quickly sensed something was off. You chose today on purpose, to make me decide, to make me regret. The more he spoke, the more pained he became, finally slamming his hand against his temple. I rolled my eyes. You're overthinking it. No matter what choice you make, I'm not keeping this child. My voice lacked strength as I leaned against the wall, stating matter-of-factly, I know you can't do that. Even though this matter was quite simple. Just not to contact Martina for a month. Yet, he couldn't manage such a simple task. Martina saved our lives in elementary school. So we promised her we'd always gather for her birthday. Raymond and his friends had fanciful ideas back in 3rd grade. They found a container to sleep in for a night. The next day, they woke up already thousands of meters in the air, teetering on the edge of disaster. Fortunately, Martina, who secretly followed them, discovered the situation and saved them just in time. Since then, she had been accepted by this group of men, becoming their beloved mascot. How they pampered her was their business. Raymond agreed to the divorce. Everything was processed smoothly. Soon, a month of cooling off passed. As we left the Civil Affairs Bureau, his expression was one of despair. He wouldn't give up, begging me for another chance. Saying he wanted to make amends. Saying he loved me. His tall frame hunched over as if it might break. From pleading to entangling himself, it escalated. Neither of us noticed we had stepped onto the road. Nor did we notice a red BMW speeding towards me. Bang. Everything happened too fast. By the time I reacted, Raymond had already been knocked away in front of me. It felt like a slow-motion scene from a movie. The last thing he said to me before flying away was, "I'm sorry." At that moment, my heart stopped. Only when something heavy hit the ground did I snap back to reality. I rushed forward. At that moment, Martina burst out of the passenger seat, seeing Raymond had been hit, and went wild. She screamed at me to die, lunging at me with a knife. But she was quickly pinned against the car hood by patrolling officers, who took the knife from her. "Sarah, why don't you just die? If it weren't for you, they wouldn't all distance themselves from me. It's all because of you. You bitch. I'll kill you." Martina had lost it. Because on the day of the surgery, her parents had seen Raymond and his friends at Martina's place and were furious, leading to a complete boycott of Martina's family businesses. To quell the public outrage, they decided to sacrifice Martina, sending her abroad and forbidding her from ever returning. Originally, the family boys treated her like a lucky charm, but when their own interests were at stake, they immediately distanced themselves from her. This was Martina's darkest hour. And she believed the root of all this was me. If I were dead, everything would go back to normal. Listening to her, I found it absurd. Raymond survived, but was half paralyzed. Martina wasn't sentenced to death, but she was convicted of intentional assault and received a life sentence. I heard that while in prison, for some reason, she was slashed across the face and disfigured. After Raymond's incident, many people came to me. His parents, his friends, my parents. His parents pleaded with me not to abandon Raymond during this time, for the sake of our past as a couple. His friends hoped I would stay with him to help him through this tough time, since he saved my life. My parents wanted me to go home quickly and avoid getting into trouble. In the end, I went to see Raymond. Once a proud man. Now lying in a hospital bed, needing help for everything. He didn't speak. He just looked at me, filled with regret. I thanked him. After all, he saved my life. I know I have no right to ask you to stay. Raymond choked out, his voice hoarse and pained. "This is all my doing, my retribution. The doctor didn't give you a death sentence. If you cooperate with treatment, you still have a chance to stand again," I said. Raymond was excited at my words, looking at me with anticipation, and nervously said, "So you're willing to?" "I'm already preparing to go back home. You know I'm an only child. If it weren't for you, I should have graduated and returned home to take over the family business." I spoke in a calm, measured tone. In that moment, I saw Raymond's expression darken, like a lifeless sunflower, his eyes reddening, his smile bittersweet and self-deprecating. I knew it. A useless person like me should just rot in the mud for this whole life. "Raymond, we each have our own lives. You can't affect me anymore, and I shouldn't affect you either." I interrupted his self-pity. Perhaps my gaze was too piercing, striking at his heart. The ward was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. The sunlight outside streamed through the window, enveloping me in a layer of golden warmth. I returned home. Little by little, I could hear news from Nanching. Raymond took 2 years to stand back up, but his illness delayed the company's development, forcing it to close. Another new year arrived. Vincent texted me, "Happy New Year." When I received the message, I was helping my parents cook. I wiped my hands and saw he sent a selfie of himself sitting on the balcony. I couldn't help but tease, "Celebrating the new year alone again? You could come to my parents' house. We'd take you in for a few days." Quickly, he replied, "No, my partner wouldn't be happy about that." He was referring to his first love, who had passed away years ago. I smiled. I looked up at the view outside the window. It was snowing, and the scenery was beautiful. And,